get that going again. And
is my mic on? Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. You can hear me okay?
Huh?
Let me just get... I'm so glad you're here today, Rob. One moment.
Keeping you on your toes today.
Yes. Okay. Just getting the technical piece set up, and we will get into everything in just one moment. And while that is queuing up, I'm going to bring up a poll for anybody that might be joining us and logging in. If you want to tell us what your role is, whether you're in leadership, an advisor, staff, or other, we'd love to hear kind of who's with us. So I'll have you do that while I'm just making sure the rest of this back end is good to go. It always takes just a minute to go through. Okay, let's see if anybody's completed the poll. I know a lot of people end up watching after the fact. So I'm just going to end that for now. And if you join us and want to drop in the chat what your role is, we'd love to hear who's on the line, where you're joining us from. I'm glad to be with you guys today. If you haven't been on our calls before, my name is Jennifer Hensley. I'm the host for Changing the Game. Today we're at episode 5 of this series. And before we dive into our topic today around leveraging others, I want to thank all of those veterans out there in celebration of Veterans Day and the service that you provide to us and the freedoms that we have. Thank you for your service. So this week, as I said, on Changing the Game, we're going to be talking about how do you leverage others. And this was one of the topics that I heard from you all that you were most interested in and felt like you had the most opportunity to improve in this area. So I'm really excited to have Rob King with us today. I feel like I need to cue up his music again here.
We're changing the game, Jennifer, changing the game.
We're going to have some fun while we're at it. So.
Yep.
We do have one session left after this. It's going to be on December 9th. So we have a little bit of break for the holidays. And then we'll be back on December 9th with Mindy Wilke, who's going to talk about your marketing playbook and those systems to make sure all the things we've been talking about this fall, how do you actually keep those going? And then hopefully, I'd love to hear from you guys, but I'm thinking we'll probably do another season next year. I'll probably be putting a question out in the group around what that looks like, and we're looking for some feedback. So if anybody has ideas, suggestions, what you want to hear more of, what you liked, what you didn't like, I'd love to hear from you so we can keep building on this. So let's get into our session today. If you have any comments or questions as we go, feel free to drop those comments in the chat, or you can use the Q&A for questions that you might have, and we'll be sure to respond to those. So Rob, thanks for joining me. Always a pleasure. It's been a while since we've got to do one of these, so I'm excited about it. But start us off with just how you like to introduce yourself. I could do your thing again.
Jen, yes, good to see you. Thanks for having me. I'm very, very honored and humbled to be here. And as I said, we were talking about this beforehand. I don't get so much caught up on the introduction. I mean, I don't have any catchy elevator pitch or anything like that. So huge opportunity for me. But usually it's just, you know, hi, I'm Rob King, and I work with Northwestern Mutual, and let the conversation develop where it may. Now, of course, if I'm on an airplane and I don't want to talk, I might say I do life insurance. That usually shuts people up pretty quick, but I usually keep it very broad and very open just to see what their reaction is, and that way I can play off whatever their reaction is.
Well, I think most people just know who you are, Rob.
I would not go that far.
Well, as we get into our topic today around leveraging others, why do you think that's something that people should consider as part of their marketing?
For sure. Well, to me, leveraging others. So when I think about that, when I first started, prospecting was always a challenge, right? Because you want to find the right people you want to be in front of. And so I realized early on, either I can do it or I can lean on others to help me do it. And so when I first started, I thought of it as really started with law firms, because I realized technically there are people inside of law firms who are prospecting for you. They just don't know it yet. And what I mean by that is every year at a certain time of year, new attorneys are getting hired. And so naturally, when you first start, like those are ideal people for you to be in front of. And I didn't have the network to get me in front of them. So I wanted to make sure that I met the person who was bringing them through the door.
That's some good advice there, and you know how you went about doing it and showing that actual example. So I think a lot of people don't think about when we say leveraging others, like what does that even mean? And there's probably multiple ways to leverage others. It doesn't always have to be one specific approach, like a speaking engagement. You could do it in various different ways. So what have been some of your challenges that you've faced when you think about leveraging others to help, you know, increase your exposure and your audience?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, during 2020, that is a challenge. So a couple of things to think of, like with the attorney example, that works really, really well. Another one that works really well is, like Jen said, speaking engagements. So, you know, especially in the hospital, I had a conversation with somebody this morning about this. Hospitals are hyper focused on delivering education. So when you talk about financial planning and the concept of education, it fits very, very well with that narrative. And my standing agreement with any hospital that we speak at is we're not going to talk about specific products. We're going to talk about education and potential pitfalls that doctors run into when they finish training. And so because of that, it's very much educational focused, and they've got no problem routinely putting you on the calendar. So there again, you've got someone who is prospecting for you because there are new residents every year. It's just a matter of being in front of them. So the same thing holds true in the world of athletics. You know, with there are a couple of universities that I work with their athletic departments, and whether they are, every school kind of has different titles, but if they're an academic counselor for all the athletes, I played sports, so my heart kind of leans towards athletics, but they want to deliver education as well. And so it's amazing what you can get out of giving back in the sense of delivering financial education to people. So in the times that we've done things like that and leveraging those relationships, you know, we've done it for years, but lately I had someone take a picture and post it online, and it was amazing the response I got from clients and prospects who saw it. They were completely impressed at the fact that we would go and deliver education to kids. Not rocket science, right? Like, they're kids, they need education. We have the education, let's give it to them. But it was crazy how many of them brought it up in the meeting unsolicited. And in my mind, I thought, I've been doing this for years. I never had anybody take a picture of it. So, you know, there again, there is a lesson when you're out and about doing these things. Make sure there is someone, whether they are on your team or you just literally walk up and say, hey, take a picture of this while I'm doing this. So you have visual documentation in this world that we're living in.
Yeah, those are some great ideas. And especially how I think when you talk about the physicians and the attorneys of something that's like really provided some scale for you, that like it's going to continue to have repeat opportunities there for you. And by leading with education and the concepts and that you're trying to help people understand rather than products or certain specific features of things. So talk a little bit about like surprises. I mean, you talked a little bit about, you know, just, you know, making sure you have a picture, things that were surprising to you in your journey.
You want surprises from 2020 or you want surprises?
Well, I'm sure everybody would be really interested in knowing about 2020 because, I mean, everybody's trying to figure that out, right?
Yeah.
What does that look like? So maybe start there.
Yeah. So surprises in 2020. If I'm in a room, I've learned to become much more engaging in a room. Like it's easy to walk around and interact in a room. How do you do that on Zoom, right? So that's been a challenge, and we've tried some creative outside the box ideas. We created a social media scavenger hunt, and so we did one presentation last month where we had just a list of 10 things that were on our website, Twitter, and LinkedIn, so that everyone could seek it out and find it kind of as their pre-work. And then the person who had the most right answers, we gave some prize. So that worked, you know, that works well from an engagement standpoint. But the other thing that we did is we'll ask questions throughout the course of our presentation. And through the promo shop, there's all kinds of great stuff that can extend the conversation. And so whoever the first person that responds, you know, we give them like a Northwestern Mutual water bottle, or better yet, hand sanitizer. And so, you know, the hope is that those things first of all, it's amazing because at the end, like everyone will email you who won. Hey, I won the water bottle. My address is, my contact information is.
They want their stuff.
Right, but that's what you want, right? Like you want the name, you want the contact information so you can follow up. And they're throwing it at you. But then like the hope is that from that event moving forward, as they're carrying their water bottle in the hospital, that conversation of Northwestern Mutual and I got this information from such and such continues on well after the event.
Yeah, I mean, those things that continue on, I think, are some of the things that make the bigger differences and the things that they'll use, on a repeatable basis. I was just talking with somebody this morning too, and you're talking about like gift baskets and like, well, that could be nice, but it might be gone tomorrow,
Right.
versus if it's something they're going to use and enjoy or experience and continue to enjoy over time, it might become more of that conversation piece. And that's great to hear how you've still been able to get contact information and all the key information to stay in touch with people in this environment that we're in. So as you went through this journey and it's evolved this year, how you're doing it, tell us a little bit about how things are really different for you. How's it impacted your practice?
COVID or doing things via Zoom?
In terms of just your journey with leveraging others, as you've gotten more comfortable in that space, done different things, it's definitely evolved this year. How does you feel like what impact that really has in your practice?
So it's helped a ton. Like our traditional business model this year has, just upended in March because I am a very social person. Like we like to be out and about at whether it's charity events, speaking engagements, like whatever, just being about, because for me, marketing is, you're kind of always marketing in this business, right? Like if I'm walking down the street to go get lunch and there's, all these people on the street, like that's a marketing event, right? There are people who are coming out of those buildings that are my A clients that I want to meet. So every opportunity is a marketing engagement. And then bam, all of a sudden it's gone. So we had to quickly figure out, hey, how can we keep that presence going even though we're not in front of people, and leveraging others became a really, really good tool for that. So, with our COIs and the people who were in charge of those groups, we kind of doubled down and made sure we were still present with them. And one of the things that we did to reinforce the behavior of, if Jen shot me an email and said, hey, oh my God, you got to talk to so-and-so, we made sure that any of those unsolicited introductions, we sent a handwritten note with a Starbucks gift card. And so funny, Starbucks, they always have certain gift cards out, depending on whatever the season is. But there's massive boxes behind the counter. And there's always one that's cute that says, I owe you one, or thanks, this one's on me, or something like that. Now, of course, they're going to look at you funny when you go in and you say you want, 10 or 20 of those, because they have to search them out and find them. But I would say I always, and I strongly recommend this, I always have some of those in my briefcase. So no matter where I am, when I get one of those introductions, I can stroke out a handwritten note, drop a gift card in there, and send it off on the spot. And it's been really fascinating when we've done that at least 2 or 3 times. Those people consistently send introductions. And so we definitely want to make sure that we continue to leverage those COIs. And it's just crazy how a Starbucks gift card incentivizes that behavior. Now, of course, if you can do a local restaurant, that's phenomenal. But as we've all seen with COVID, people have gone more national. So it's harder to find a local restaurant or coffee shop in the town that they live in that they happen to like. So, Starbucks is kind of a default because I know there's a Starbucks on every corner everywhere.
Yeah. But you found a way to make it personal still by, adding in that handwritten note from you too, to go with it, that warms it up and reinforces that connection.
And just by happenstance, it's enough to buy 2 drinks. So hopefully they take some of that with them.
They bring you along and you guys can enjoy that together,
That's right.
So thinking about, our audience, and especially we have a lot of people in here that are fairly newer in the business or newer to marketing. Why do you think they don't focus on how they can leverage others?
Well, so it's interesting because I feel like when you first start out in this business, there's a ton of things coming at you. And it's almost like drinking from a fire hose. I think we've all heard that. And it's one of those things that they don't necessarily teach in training. So while our training, we talk about a lot of different things, like we don't talk about really how to network. We don't talk about how to engage the person you meet at an event. So it's, hey, go to events, be seen, but there's no, okay, you met this person, how do you move them through the process? And so I think with leveraging others, like there's no blueprint. There's no, hey, this is how you do that to get to that point.
So to piggyback on that, then, like, how do you feel like individuals should do that? Or how have you learned to do that?
Yeah.
Is it something that, like, hey, you're a natural marketer and you're very comfortable with that? Or if you're not, what do you suggest?
No, like literally when I first started, I thought marketing was a unicorn. Like it didn't exist to me. It was this hole that we threw money at. But I think everybody knows one or two people who seem to know everybody, right? So pre-2020, with those people, I would make sure that when I was going somewhere, I would invite them. Because then when I'm out and about and they know everybody, they're going to introduce you to everybody wherever you are. And ultimately, that's what you want. It's a free commercial. And so, I would start with the people that know everybody. And then at a certain point, I would get really strategic about taking particular clients to different events. And so if you're younger, now this one story, this is a home run. It doesn't happen with everyone, but this guy gets it. I think he's early 70s now. So clear, I hope I don't look 70. So he's older, I'm younger, me, him, and his wife would go to events together. And people they would look at him, they look at me, look at him, look at me, and they'd say, how do you know him? And my client would, yeah, for sure. And my client wouldn't hesitate, and he would point to me and say, he tells me how much money I can spend. Okay, boom, the door is open, right? And so, after that, I got really intentional around the type of people I would invite to go places with me, because either one, I would coach them on the front end, or I'd know that they were articulate enough to creatively talk about what I've done for them versus I bought life insurance from him, or he has my 529. And so then it gets to be really fun because it becomes just a giant chess game of, okay, I'm going to this event. Who can I bring along? Who's going to be there that I want to meet? And how can I get that personal introduction and warm introduction, in person?
That's great tips and everything. I think some of the things I've heard advisors do too is think about, if maybe you're not as comfortable in that space, if your spouse is, or somebody on your team is the same way, how can you leverage them and utilize, who's comfortable in different ways?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's funny you say that. I have a couple of clients that their partners are not comfortable in that environment. And so, like, we became each other's networking buddies, I guess, where, they would call, and if I were free, I would go, and their partners and spouses were cool with it. And we'd both work the room and then introduce each other's friends and clients to each other.
That's a a creative way to approach that situation. So we always like to leave the audience, all of our viewers, all of you out here, with some kind of practical try it at work tip of something they could do in the next week or two to take one step forward in terms of how can they leverage others more effectively. What recommendation do you have for them? What's your tip for this week?
Yes, the tip for the week. I would think long and hard about the person who knows everybody. And I would also think about someone who is potentially building a calendar of education. And so whether that's in the medical community, in the legal community, they're a part of an association, whoever that is, find out who is creating a calendar for 2021 that consists of education of some kind. Doesn't have to be financial, because you're going to bring that to them. And then reach out to them and just tell them, hey, I'm in a study group because, hey, guess what? This is a study group now. And one of the things we're talking about is delivering financial education, because we found that there's a growing need amidst all of the concern and anxiety in 2020. Is there any time on your calendar that your constituency would benefit from some financial education?
Great tip. And actually, you kind of gave them two tips in one, in terms of the educational calendar and connecting with somebody, and then just who's that person that is kind of connected with everybody. We all, like you said, we all know somebody like that.
Yes.
So one last question for you, and then we'll open it up to questions from our audience. So if you have questions, go ahead and start putting those in the Q&A. But curious, who else do you feel like this group should hear from? Who's doing some interesting things that you think would be good for our audience to hear from?
That's a good question. So one person I would toss out is Matt Aaron. He's out of DC, super creative. I'd love to just hear all the things that he's doing. And someone else I think that would be beneficial is my man, Tim Barnhart from Oswego, New York. We met in Fast Track years ago, and I'm always impressed at the things he comes up with and the things he's doing.
Yeah, I love hearing those things too that go all the way back to Fast Track of how those relationships just continue.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. We're going to open it up to any questions that are coming in. So as those come in, I'll start with one other question I wondered about. So besides COIs, you talked about a little bit like speaking engagements and everything, but what are some other ways that maybe people could think about? Who else could they be leveraging when we're talking about leveraging others?
Yeah, so other than COIs and speaking engagements?
Yeah, what other ideas do you have in that space?
I mean, like your raving fans are the best people to leverage. Like, so, that's actually probably a good thing to work on, is creating a raving fan in 2021, just figuring out, hey, what is it that I know about this person, and how can I make them a raving fan? And so if there's a way to get them to promote you via social media, get them to share your content, whatever it is, that can go exponentially well. Now, I don't necessarily have a process for developing that. That's one of those feel things that, unfortunately, I'm sorry, if you're just starting out, there's not a set path to do that. But much like we all know that person that is that knows everybody, that person that's really, really involved in social media. And so, like, that's the person that you want to kind of get as close to as possible, because they're not going to say bad things about you if you do your job. And so the times that you're in a meeting and you point out something that they've never thought of before, and it's a true aha moment, they're going to turn around and share it and write a glowing review about you, because you came at it from a place of care.
Yeah, and I think you made me think about, just like you were talking about these opportunities for networking events or something. How could we have that person that's introducing us in that relationship the same way, digitally, of maybe you have that person too that's gonna, hey, can you comment on my post? Can you share it to your audience? I'll do the same for you. That just helps to get the ball rolling and get other people engaged, and helps to expand your audience there. And then I know for some people, they think about it too, of like, what role does maybe joint work in either up or down play in terms of leveraging others? Has that been part of your strategy in terms of utilizing other people at all?
Not anything intentionally. Not really, no.
Okay. So, but that is something that certainly can be a factor for some people, especially for those of you that I think that are looking at national practices as well, like how do you work in other areas? Although right now, everybody's on technology, so that's changed a little bit. I don't think we have any other questions in the Q&A right now. Just going to check the chat and see if there's any there. Okay, I think we've taken care of all of those. So thank you again, Rob, for your time. This is always a joy, always fun to connect with you. And thanks for everybody in our audience today for joining us. As part of our thank you, Playmaker Coaching Consulting wants to donate to a cause that's near and dear to you, Rob. So I'd love to hear about what cause that is and that we can help support.
Excellent. Very cool. Do you want that name now?
Yeah, I'd love to hear about them. Tell us a little bit about an organization.
Wow, that's interesting. That's a fun surprise. So I, again, based on the theme of education, I do a lot based around the college I went to and the high school. So if I had to pick one, I'd probably say the college, which is Center College in the middle of Kentucky.
Okay.
And so it's just been one of those organizations that did a lot for me. So I've given a lot back to them, both in as they say in the development world, time and treasure.
Yeah. Well, they sound like they're doing a lot of good work, and I'd love to be able to help support them in that cause that's connected.
That's awesome. Very cool.
So, yeah, we'll follow up afterwards, get some details from you, and I'd love to do that. So I'm excited to support that organization. And if anybody has any additional questions about today's content, since I know this was an area that you guys were very interested in learning more about, certainly when we send out the replay or post it, feel free to comment, drop your questions in there, or email me, or I'm sure Rob's open to anybody that has questions to reach out as well, that we want to just be here as a resource and continue this dialogue. And, we can certainly go deeper in some of these areas as well, if that would be helpful. Our next session is going to be, like I said, on our last episode, December 9th, with Mindy Wilke on the Marketing Playbook. In the interim, this Thursday? Yeah, tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday. We have our Idea Slam at 9 o'clock Central Time that you can plug into. So if you want to take some of the ideas we talked about today, brainstorm around it, talk about it more in depth, get ideas from others, a great opportunity to just jump in there whenever you can during that time. And then next Tuesday, the 17th, we'll have open office hours at 2 o'clock. So a couple additional resources available to you that I hope you find valuable and can share with other people in your office. So thanks again, Rob. Remember his try it at work tip of, who do you know that knows everyone, and who is building that education calendar that you can connect to. Let us know if you do try it and how it works. We'd love to hear your experience with that. And we'll be back in a few weeks after Thanksgiving. We'll be back with our next episode. So have a great holiday in the interim. And again, thank you to all of our servicemen and women.
Excellent. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, have a great day.
See ya.